Today we are kicking off our series in the book of John. It's one of the Gospels, one of those four Gospels, and I'm excited to be able to share this first message with you. But before we get started in that, I feel like I should let you know I have had multiple skunk encounters. Anybody with me? You've had a skunk encounter? I could tell you about several of these encounters. I could tell you about the one time when I was probably 6th, 7th grade, and my family went camping at Deer Creek State Park, and we were all sitting around the fire, and my dad was sitting there in his chair, and he felt something coming up between his chair and right out between his legs. It birthed a little skunk right there, just right towards the campfire in the middle of our campground, It was memorable. I could tell you about the time when I was at Mount Vernon Nazarene University, and me and some friends were walking back to our dorms after dark, and we saw a skunk walking across the beautiful campus of Mount Vernon right over towards the girls' dorms. So we decided to start throwing sticks and rocks at it to see if it would spray near the girls' dorms. I could tell you about that encounter. It's a good time. And maybe if you follow me on social media, you've seen this skunk encounter that you're about to watch right here.
I woke up this morning, it's 4:45 in the morning, and I let Zulu out, and I smell skunk. Terrible. So, she's gotten sprayed before. Not looking forward to this. There's a skunk on our porch.
That's a dog kennel that she's in.
Kennels. What the heck? What the heck? Zulu wasn't sprayed. Oh my goodness, it reeks out here. There it is.
Can you spray again?
Yeah. So here's my plan. I'm gonna
Up to 6 times.
With this. Hopefully it doesn't spray. Open it and run away.
Oh, I can taste it.
I know, it's terrible. See that important? Okay, it might not be locked. Once I get it open, I'm just gonna leave it.
I mean, how did it get back there?
I have no clue.
Because that wasn't.
Yeah, he sprayed in here. Okay, he went behind this stuff. The door is open. Well, that was fun for 4:50 in the morning. I woke up this morning, it's 4:45.
That's on the loop. There we go. Man, a skunk encounter will change your life. Is that right? Some of you out there, I heard you guys like, oh man, that smell. Have you guys ever smelled a fresh smell skunk, right? Not just like you're driving down the highway at 65 and you smell that a skunk went off. Like, it's this putrid, like chemical, it permeates everything, and it's just nasty. Who's been part of that? Your dog's been sprayed, there you go. Yeah, you can't describe it. Like, my favorite part of that video, and it's super, super low, but Kristen, I had to share it, right? I had to go wake Kristen up at 4:50 in the morning, be like, come here, check this out, right? And she walks out, and you can hear it when the camera changes that first time. She said, oh, I can taste it. It's just in the air, and it's nasty. It's when you experience it up close, it's way, way different. But I think we have that when we encounter a lot of things, right? It's not just bad things. Like life-changing encounters disrupt our reality because we change the way that we behave. We change. Like I don't normally walk like that, trying to get behind something, right? It was the fact that I'd experienced something and I didn't want that on me, so I changed my behavior, right? But we have encounters like this all the time. And not every encounter that we have is a life-changing encounter, right? There are some of you guys who encountered something on the way here and you don't even think a second thought of it. There's some of you that had an encounter with a hot cup of coffee this morning, but because it's not life-changing, because it doesn't change your behavior, you don't even think about it again. But we have these life-changing encounters that happen, and we typically have them in two different ways, right? We have them in two different ways. That we have ones that we chase, and we have ones that we face, right? We have ones that we're seeking out, and we have ones that just kind of happen to us and we didn't have anything to do with, right? And maybe it was a skunk encounter where you were chasing the skunk. Maybe, I don't know. I don't know your reasons. Or maybe it was something where the skunk happened to you. Maybe it was something where you heard that a celebrity was going to be around. You heard that a celebrity was going to be somewhere, and so you changed your plans and you went to go see that celebrity. Or maybe you went to go see the national park. Or maybe you went to go on top of the mountain to get a picture of the sunrise, right? Like these are things that are indescribable. It's hard to put into words what they are until you encounter them, right? It's kind of like the Grand Canyon. Anybody ever been to the Grand Canyon? Yeah. It's just a hole in the ground until you stand there and you encounter it, and it changes something, right? It's beautiful. So we have these encounters that we pursue, but also these encounters that pursue us. And I wonder what would happen. I wonder what that encounter would have been like if you and I were in first century. The first time we encountered Jesus. If you and I were going to be followers of Jesus, one of Jesus' disciples, what would that encounter with Jesus for the very first time have been like? You ever think about questions like that? Like, what would it be to actually experience Jesus in the flesh for the very first time? Do you think it would disrupt your reality? In John chapter 1, which is where we're going to be, if you want to go ahead and open your Bibles, John chapter 1, we're going to start in verse 45. But John is talking about the ministry of Jesus, the ministry of Jesus' earthly time here as he starts gaining followers. And he tells us this story, and he's walking by, and John the Baptist, who his job was to prepare the way. His job was to prepare everybody for the coming of Jesus. And Jesus is walking by one day, and John's like, that's him. That's the Messiah. That's the guy. He's the guy that I'm not worthy to untie his sandals. And two of the followers, two of the people that had said, I'm going to follow John, I'm going to learn from John the Baptist, who were following John, looked at Jesus and said, I'm going to go follow him. And so Jesus got two disciples. And they asked him a question. They were like, Jesus, where do you lay your head? And he said, come on, come and see. And so he did. And next day he got up. And Andrew, which was one of those guys, he went to find his brother Simon, and Simon came and saw Jesus and met Jesus, and he encountered Jesus for the first time, and he started to follow Jesus. It was an encounter that changed their life. And so now this middle portion of the first chapter in John, Jesus has got four disciples who are following with him. Four people who have said, yeah, I'll follow you. And Philip is one of the last ones to come in and in this group of four. And so Philip goes out and he goes to find his friend Nathanael. And that's where we're going to pick up, because the encounters disrupt our reality. And this is what we're going to read here about Nathanael. My name's Nathanael as well. My mom calls me that when I'm in trouble. It's spelled different, though. So I relate with this story a little bit. But listen to this. In verse 45, Philip, remember, he had just been following Jesus for about 24 hours, right? Philip went to look for Nathanael and told him, we have found the very person Moses and the prophets wrote about. His name is Jesus, the son of Joseph from Nazareth. And I absolutely love Nathanael's response to this. I love Nathanael's response here. It's got this little bit of doubt in it. We oftentimes give doubting Thomas, Jesus rises from the dead. He's like, yeah, I won't see it till I believe it. This is that same tone that Nathanael takes with Philip telling him about Jesus. Nazareth, exclaimed Nathanael. Can anything good come from Nazareth? See, Nazareth was this podunk town. There was no roads going through it. It was like a cul-de-sac. It was a one-way street. Everyone was coming out of Nazareth. No one wanted to go into Nazareth. And he knew that. And he's like, can anything good come from Nazareth? And Philip, who'd only been following Jesus for about 24 hours, said, "Come and see for yourself, Philip." And as they approached, Jesus said, "Now here is a genuine son of Israel, a man of complete integrity." "How do you know me?" Nathanael asked. You ever just asked an honest question? Someone says something that surprises you and it just takes you back, like, how do you see me? You know me? How? How do you know about me? And Jesus replied, catch this. "I could see you under the fig tree before Philip found you." Then Nathanael exclaimed, "Rabbi, you are the Son of God, the King of Israel." And Jesus asked him, "Do you believe in me just because I told you I had seen you under the fig tree? Oh, you will see greater things than this." You see, it wasn't just an encounter that Nathanael had with Jesus. It was an encounter that disrupted his reality. It was an encounter that messed with the way that he thought, that messed with the way that he lived, because Nathanael left and followed Jesus. See, Philip goes and gets this guy, gets his friend, and he's like, "Guy, dude, come on, this is what we've been waiting for." And he's like, I don't think so." He's like, I can't answer your questions, just come and see." And so he does. And Jesus responds with one of the most frustrating cliffhangers in the entire New Testament for me. Jesus' response is so frustrating if you think about it. And here's why. What does Jesus say? Jesus said, "I saw you under the fig tree." I saw you under the fig. Now, anybody ever been in the shade of a fig tree? No? Not few? No? I mean, I don't think I have, right? But I didn't grow up where this story is taking place, because fig trees are all over the place. Fig trees are all over the place, and it is hot where they are, so everyone was relaxing under the fig trees. Like, everyone wants to get out of the sun and get into the shade. Am I right? If it was a hot day, where would you want to find yourself? In the shade. That's exactly right. See, this is something that is a normal, everyday thing. He has a fig tree encounter with Jesus, right? This fig tree encounter with Jesus. Fig trees are all over the place. And so for me, if he were to say, "Hey, Nathan," "Hey, Nate," whatever you want to call me, "Hey, Nate, I saw you under the fig tree," be like, "Man, I ain't never been under a fig tree," right? But for Nathanael, it was something completely different, because fig trees were all over the place. Fig trees were common. Like, it would be like today if Jesus said, "I saw you on your phone." Well, duh. "I saw you walking around the block of your neighborhood." Well, of course. "I saw you at Chipotle," right? You know, like, these are these everyday occurrences. These are these everyday comments. "I saw you in your car. I saw you driving to work." And you know what the proper response to that is? Okay. I mean, the proper response, if I just said, "Hey, I saw you," you'd be like, "Cool, well, okay, whatever." And that's why this is one of the most frustrating things for me in the New Testament, because we don't know what happened to Nathanael under that fig tree. But the response that he gave was way more than just okay. The response that Nathanael said, he had an encounter with Jesus. He said, "I saw you under the fig tree." And Nathanael's response was, "You are my king." That's a little bit overkill if you ask me. "I saw you in your car. Oh my goodness, you are my king. I'm going to surrender to you. I'm going to give everything up and follow you." What? Just a little overkill. I wonder what Nathanael was doing underneath that fig tree, where Jesus saw him. Before Philip, before anyone could tell Jesus about what happened to Nathanael, he had a moment of real authenticity underneath that fig tree, where maybe he was crying out to God to show him something new, where maybe he was seeking his purpose in life, where maybe he had handled a family dispute and took the higher road when he didn't want to. Maybe he was crying out like Simeon did and said, I just long to see the Messiah. And in that quiet, ordinary, everyday moment underneath the fig tree, he wanted to encounter God in a new way. And then his buddy comes up and says, guys, dude, we found him. He's like, bet. And he shows up, and he shows up. He's like, let's see if this guy is for real. And Jesus answered him, there is a true son of Israel, a man of integrity. And it messed with him. It disrupted his reality to say, how do you know me? How do you see me? And it changed his life. Jesus was the Son of God in a way fuller sense than Nathanael could have understood in that moment. And Jesus replied to Nathanael, who had not seen anything yet, but he saw something in his words. He saw something in the Messiah. He saw something in Jesus that he wanted. He snapped a photo of that encounter, but Jesus wanted him to see a picture of what could be. And Jesus says, he's like, you're impressed by this? You ain't seen nothing yet. You're going to see greater things. He goes on to say, you're going to see, if you continue to follow me, if you continue to seek me, you're going to encounter things that you can't even believe. You're going to see angels going up and down from heaven to earth because I am that bridge that's there. You're going to see this, and it's going to blow your mind. Which was a callback to Jacob, a story that Nathanael would have heard of Jacob in the desert, seeing a vision of angels ascending and descending on a staircase. I'm going to get going in the Old Testament. We're in John here, so stick with me. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. But there's this idea that he's going to see more than he ever bargained for. And his response was, you are king of my life. Did you hear what Jesus said? You are a son of Israel, a true son of Israel. And how did Nathanael respond to him? Then you are the king. If I am a son of Israel, then you are the king of Israel. He is submitting to his lordship right there. You see, remember, an encounter has the power to disrupt our realities. There was a debate that took place in Cambridge University between an atheist and a pastor. I think it was Pastor Riley who was the pastor there, and I don't know when this was. I should have done some more research. But there was a portion in it, and I loved this. And here's what happened. He said, listen, we're going to debate the question, is God real? And the atheist shows up to all the people in the university in the lecture hall, and he gives an extremely eloquent speech about why God does not exist. He gave facts and logic and rationale, and he spoke eloquently, and he shared all of these things about why God isn't real. And after his 15-minute time was up, he went down and sat down, and the pastor comes up, and he had a board kind of like this, and he said, I just have a question. I'm never going to be as eloquent as you. I'm never going to be as smart as you. I'm never going to be as real as you, and because you're an extremely smart man. And the guy said, yeah. He's like, I just have a question for you, and I'm going to do my best to show it. He's like, here's what I want to do. I'm just going to draw a circle right here. Let's just pretend that this represents all the knowledge that ever has taken place. All the knowledge that we could know, right? Everything, the sciences, the mind, we know all of the engineering. This is everything. In this circle, it fits in this circle. And he asked the atheist, he said, how much of the knowledge that could ever be known do you know? You're a smart man, you've got to know some of it. How much do you know? And the atheist walked over and he drew a line, probably about like right there. He's like, this right here, that's what I know. Oh my goodness, he's like, that's a lot. I know it doesn't look like a lot, but that's a lot for any one person to experience. That's a lot for any person to be able to know. He said, yeah. And then the pastor said, so what you're saying is this exists, you just haven't experienced it yet. You just don't know it yet. You haven't encountered it yet. And the atheist says, yes. And so the pastor looks at him and he says, boom. So therefore, can God exist? You just haven't experienced him yet. And all the Christians in the room went wild, mic drop moment, boom, got him, right? Wow. And it's a powerful analogy that maybe something exists out here that we just haven't experienced yet. Could something exist outside of what we've experienced, outside of what we've encountered, that would change our reality. And if you're a Christian in the room, you might be like, oh, I've got a friend at work I'm going to use that on. But here, I'm going to flip it real quick because here's what I want us to get to today. As we're talking about John, what if this circle represented all of the ways that we could experience God? What if this circle right here contained all of the ways that as a human we could experience the fullness of God's character? Where would your line be? Would your line be there? Would your line be more, less? I don't know. Maybe you're just a little piece of this pie right here that you've experienced God in this area. You see, I think if we were being honest with ourselves, I love talking to old people, self-described old people, people who have been walking in the faith for a long time, because they're some of the most clear people about this. They said, I've been walking with God for 50 years, and I still feel like I'm just getting to know this guy. I've been walking with God for years, and I feel like I've only scratched the surface, and I genuinely believe that there is so much to who God is. There's so much to who God is that we've only begun to scratch the surface of who he is. I tell you the truth, you will see heaven open, right? We will experience the thing just like Nathanael. We will experience God in ways that we have never experienced him before. People just need to consider Jesus. See, many will conclude that he is the Son of God once they experience who he is, once they encounter who he is. See, Nathanael did not fully know Jesus in this instance when he followed him. He just caught a glimpse of who he was, but that was enough to start. The encounter was enough to change his reality. So think about this, ways that we experience God. I just want to play a game here real quick. I want you to shout out a word. I did this with the serve team that was here this morning. Just shout out a word, something that God is to you. Ready? Ready? Maybe it's help, maybe it's hope, maybe it's whatever. But just shout out, just a few of you, shout out a word. What? Come on. Mercy. Everything. Goodness. Forgiveness. Truth. Love. Hope. Healing. Power. Mighty, majesty. There's all of these things that they are able to experience God. And this is why it's super important. This is why the Nathanael story is super interesting, because he got to encounter God in a way that was different than he had ever encountered God before. It wasn't just hear tell, right? It wasn't just somebody who heard it and then told him about it. He got to encounter it. But if you go all the way back to John chapter 1, right? John chapter 1, verse 1, it says this: in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He existed in the beginning with God. God created everything through him, and nothing was created except through him. And that word gave life to everything that was created. And his life brought light to everyone. And that light shines in the darkness, and that darkness can never be extinguished. See, what John is doing here, he understood his audience, and he understood that most of his audience who would have grown up would have understood this word, the Word, right? In the beginning, calling back to Genesis, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. In the beginning was the Word. Now, this word, the Word, had more connotations than just a word. It was law. It was the Torah. It was the understanding. It was the setting apart, right? And he kind of describes God in three different ways. And I've got this. Some of you guys aren't going to be able to read it because my writing is so small. But I just wanted to list a few things that these things have. See, he gives three instances. He gives the Word, he gives life, and he gives light, right? And his readers would have understood all of these in very different ways, right? The Word, the law, the Torah, this is reason. This is understanding. These are like the laws of gravity, this reliance that they can rely on, that the sun is going to come up tomorrow, right? This understanding, authority, power, love, justice, this idea of the eternal always has been, always will be, setting things in order, this assurance, the command. Right? These are all of the things that his readers would have understood. This is God. In the beginning was the Word. In the beginning was these ways to understand who God is in your life. And his readers would have internalized that, but he didn't just stop there. And the Word brought life, and the Word was life, which is this idea of creative, this idea of creation, growth. this potential, this idea of everything new, this breath. The way to experience this living, constant curiosity, right? This joy, this exceptionalism. The way to experience God. See, he's not just law. He's not just the word. He's also life. But he doesn't just stop at life. He goes on and he adds light. He was light, which is this warmth, confidence, sustenance, comfort, hope, peace, patience, desire, reassurance, all of these things wrapped up into this one triune God. This God that just maybe, John is putting out there to say, have you had an encounter with this God yet? Have you had, maybe you've experienced God in one way. But have you experienced God in this way? Have you experienced the life of God? Maybe you've experienced in this room today, maybe you've experienced the wrath of God, or the harshness of God, or the law of God, or the rules of God. And you've experienced God in a one-dimensional form. That's what the Pharisees did. Like to him, he was rules. This was God of rules. And John is like calling to us in 1 John saying, yeah, but have you experienced the life of God? Have you experienced God in life form, in this creativity, in this growth, in this renewal, in this acceptance, in this imaginative form? Have you experienced God as this light, as this something that draws people to himself? Have you encountered God that way? I think a lot of times we don't need a secondhand experience. We need more encounters of who God is in our life. And if we were to look back at that chart, this big old circle, how much have you experienced God? In what ways have you experienced God? Because I'm sure a lot of you have experienced God in a lot of awesome ways, but it's only scratching the surface. Hebrews 11:6 says this, and without faith it is impossible to please God, because anyone who comes to him must believe that he exists, and he rewards those who earnestly seek him. He rewards those who earnestly seek him. Today, as I've been speaking and we've been reading, and if you look at this, and maybe if you can't see it, but as I've been talking, what is an area that you would like to experience God? What is an area that maybe you don't feel that you've fully experienced him? Maybe you've heard other people tell about it. Maybe you've heard other people talk about it. It's God of love or power or might or forgiveness or mercy. You're just like, man, I'd like to experience. I only know this portion of God. See what Hebrews is saying, what happens if you earnestly seek him? What happens if we become a Nathanael and we hear about this, and instead of just saying, what good can come from Nazareth, and we go and we run after it and we seek this God that we have not yet experienced yet. What's a word in your mind where you've heard someone describe God as, and you're like, I just haven't experienced that yet. I haven't encountered that one yet. And if you have the audacity to say, I think I've encountered God to his fullest, I think God wants to answer us the same way he answered Nathanael. Oh, you ain't seen nothing yet. Oh, you haven't seen anything yet. How could we experience a new expression of God's goodness if we were to earnestly seek him? Do you guys know Christmas is 99 days away from today? Some of you celebrated and some of you went, oh, I heard it. Christmas is 99 days away from today. I wish it was 100. It would just felt better saying it, right? Christmas is 99 days away. Get your shopping done. But what would happen if for the next 99 days, as a church, we earnestly sought God in a way that we have not experienced him yet? What would happen in your life if you earnestly sought God, if you went after, if you chased, if you ran towards a God of love, of mercy, of help, of hope, of understanding, of rational thinking, of peace, of patience, of kindness? What would happen if you intentionally and earnestly ran after a God of that you would like to experience? What would happen? I think that same answer that Jesus gave Nathanael, oh, you ain't seen nothing yet. You're about to see the heavens open. You're about to experience me in an entirely different way. And that word became life. It became a light that couldn't be hidden. in your life, in the life of this church, in the life of our families, in the life of our communities? What would it look like if we experienced God in a way that we haven't experienced before? Oh, I get excited thinking about it. I get excited thinking that a little chart on that line might move a little bit higher because we experience him in a new way, and there's still more yet to come. I challenge you. I want to challenge you with the word that God put in your mind right now that you've heard other people describe God as, and you've heard other people say that this is an expression of who God is. What would it look like if you ran towards that for 99 days? Do you think your life would look different? I think it would. But it didn't just stop there with Nathanael. Nathanael was invited to see what was going on. See, I think a lot of times we can miss that opportunity of the invitation to invite somebody along to describe what's going on, just the way Philip did to Nathanael. Nathanael, you got to come check this guy out. This is the guy that we've been hoping for. This is the guy that we've been waiting for. I just encountered him, and it changed my life. And he's like, how long you been doing this? He's like, 24 hours. He's like, hang on there. But he did. He changed my life. And I can imagine Nathanael being a rational person like I am, right? I relate really well. He's asking a whole list of questions. Well, where does he come from? And what does he do? And what does he feel like? And all of this. And he's like, listen, I can't tell you. You just got to come and see. It's encountering something that's life-changing. And it's me going to get Kristen out of bed at 4:45 in the morning and say, come and see a skunk sprayed. You got to taste it. You got to see what's going on. I can't describe it. You got to come check it out. And we start living our lives in a way where it's a come and see mentality at work and at home and in our classes. We start to listen. I don't know what's going on, but I'm encountering God in a new way that's changing my reality, that's changing the way that I think, that's changing the way that I'm acting. What would it look like? Just how John the Baptist invited people to encounter God, just as the followers of God and followers of Jesus invited people to come check him out. You have that invitation today, and you have the opportunity to invite others. You have that invitation to invite others to experience and encounter God in a way that they have never encountered him. Whether you're an atheist in this room today, or you're an agnostic, or you've been a Christian for 55 and a half years, you have an opportunity today to invite somebody to come along and experience God in a way that you have never experienced him yet. That's my God. That's the God that I serve. Come and see. They didn't have all the answers. Can anything good come from Nazareth? You ever asked a question like that? Can anything good come from Nazareth? Can anything good come from organized religion? Can anything good come from me not missing a Sunday? Can anything good come from me actually joining a small group? Can anything good come from me losing my job? Can anything good come from this? These are those questions, and all Philip had to say. Philip didn't try to give a philosophical detail, way smarter than me. Philip didn't try to speak for God. All he says is, I want to invite you to encounter what I've encountered. I want to invite you to check it out. I want to invite you to seek what you have not experienced yet, and it'll change your reality. When we encounter God, this God that John is describing, this God that Nathanael meets, it disrupts our reality and changes our behavior. It changes our thinking patterns. It changes our addictions. It changes what we seek. It changes what we desire. It changes our priorities. You just have to come and see. You just have to come and see. So I'm going to invite the band back up, and we're going to close today in a time of worship as we get this opportunity to experience who God is in a new way. And I'm going to invite you to just bow your heads where you are, just shut your eyes, have a moment with God. And I want to invite you to a fig tree encounter. I want to invite you to an ordinary moment that you're having alone with God in public. Remember that time I saw you in church? I was like, yeah, I go to church all the time. What is it that Jesus could say to you that would make you have a Nathanael response to a fig tree encounter? Maybe it's the healer that you need to experience. Maybe it's the hope. Maybe it's the joy. Maybe it's his presence. Maybe it is the word or the life or the light that you've not yet experienced. You've heard it. You've heard that it might be too good to be true. Can I tell you this? It actually is. This is a story that is too good to be true, yet it is. And as we sit here this morning, I pray that you are having a Nathanael moment where underneath the fig tree of your life, you are submitting something to God. You are calling out to something that God has, a way that you would like to experience who He is in the fullness of His grace and the fullness of His expression of His godness in your life. And that this week you would encounter it in a way that makes you say, "You are my King." It's going to disrupt my reality, but you are my King. It's going to change the way I live, but you are my King. It's going to change my priorities, but you are my King. Latch onto that word. Let's pray for a fig tree moment. That God's goodness wouldn't be something that we encounter once and forget about it. Something that we encounter time and time and time and time again. And when we're old and gray and we're telling our great grandkids about the times that we have encountered God in our life, that they don't end. And we tell them about the day yesterday when we encountered yet a new version of God's goodness. Time when we encountered a new way to make Him King of our life. Because it disrupts our reality and changes everything.